Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, we had a horrific tragedy here in the District of Columbia today on the campus of the Navy Yard. I'm joined at this press briefing by Chief Kathy Lanier of our Metropolitan Police Department, the District Director of the FBI, Valerie Parley, who is with us as well, Chief Teresa Chambers of the Park Police, and the person who represents the District of Columbia in the House of Representatives, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. Let me first of all say again, we all know this is a horrific tragedy, certainly one of the worst in recent memory, and certainly I don't know we can ever remember anything quite like this here in the city. We know these kinds of things have happened in other places and other cities in America, but nothing like this here in the District of Columbia. Let me begin by saying that my heart, like that of our entire administration and others, goes out to the families, those who have been victimized, who left home to go to work this morning thinking they were going to, work on behalf of our nation, working at the Navy Yard, working for the Navy, only to have something horrific like this to occur. Secondly, I want to thank all the first responders, all the law enforcement agencies, and all the dozens, the hundreds of people who have done such a sterling job today to deal with this horrific tragedy. I'll be followed by Chief Lanier and then Valerie Parley, Chief Chambers if she chooses to speak, and then Congresswoman Norton. First of all, I think earlier today we talked about the possibility of there being two other suspects. One of those has been ruled out. That gentleman has been identified and is no longer a suspect. He's been talked to by law enforcement officials, and there is no reason to continue any views that he may have been involved in this. There is still yet another person who was identified earlier. That was a person in the video who was wearing a drab olive uniform, around 50 years of age, around 5'10", African-American man, and we are continuing to look to him to determine what, if any, involvement he may have had. There are many people who have asked us whether we think that there is there's terrorism involved in this. We don't know what the motive is at this stage. We'll obviously will continue to seek information about what the motive is, but we don't have any reason at this stage to suspect terrorism, but certainly it has not been ruled out. We now have a total of 13 fatalities, including the shooter. We had one additional since we last convened. That was one of the victims who died at a hospital as a result of the wounds that he suffered. We don't even know, most of us ourselves, the identities of the victims at this stage, so we have no information to offer about that. And of course, we would not do that until we have been able to assure that their families and their loved ones have been notified. So those who may have questions about the identity of the victims, there's nothing that we can offer in that regard at this point. Two other pieces of information, and I'll ask Chief Lanier to come up. First of all, we want to urge once again the people who live in this area to stay out of the area. There's absolutely no reason to come down here, especially since we continue to seek information about the person that I mentioned earlier, to try to rule in and rule out his involvement in this horrific incident. And then finally, for those who've asked us, many have asked us about the Washington Nationals baseball game this evening. That has been postponed and has been rescheduled for 1 o'clock tomorrow. I guess they'll play a doubleheader, 1 o'clock tomorrow and then 7:05 tomorrow evening. So with that information as an update, let me now ask Chief Lanier to come up and provide some additional input.
As the mayor indicated, this is still a very active law enforcement scene, so there's still a lot of activity going on. We do realize that we still have to move people through the city and around the city. It is now rush hour, approaching rush hour. As of right now, I can say in terms of traffic flow, we want to keep people obviously as far away from the area where we're actively investigating as possible, but we have now opened 295, 395, and 695. We're asking people to avoid the area around the Nats Park, and also that M Street will remain closed from South Capitol to 11th Street Southeast. So those are the areas right now we're asking people to avoid. This is still an ongoing investigation. We are continuing to ask our residents and communities and businesses in the immediate area to shelter in place and avoid the areas mentioned until we finish doing what we have to do. We are hoping in the next couple of hours to have information one way or the other on whether we can conclusively say we have all suspects or persons involved in this accounted for. There are some additional updates that have been going out in terms of the person that has been identified as a shooter in this case. That information will be shared by the FBI. We are still asking for any information from the public. We have given contact information, which I'm sure the FBI will repeat, but still anybody who has information to pass on, please continue to pass that along to the FBI in this case as we're continuing to investigate. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Val and let her give you an update on the suspect we do know.
Your name, please?
Valerie Parlave. I'm the Assistant Director in charge of the Washington Field Office of the FBI.
Spell your last name.
It's P-A-R-L-A-V-E. We can confirm that the deceased shooter from this morning has been identified as 34-year-old Aaron Alexis of Fort Worth, Texas. We have posted photographs of Mr. Alexis on our website, fbi.gov, and we ask anyone with information about him to contact us at 1-800-CALL-FBI. No piece of information is too small. We are looking to learn everything we can about his recent movements, his contacts, and his associates. This remains a very active investigation. We currently have our evidence response team moving in to process the scenes where the shootings took place. We will also continue to run down every lead, and we will continue to work together on this investigation with our law enforcement partners. Again, we ask the public to look at the photos of the deceased shooter and to contact the FBI with any and all information. Thank you.
Is there any indication Mr. Alexis has a military background?
Can you hold the questions until we get to the finish? Okay, thank you. Chief?
Thank you for the opportunity just to say that what you're seeing here is the teamwork that goes into every law enforcement and public safety enterprise here in the DC area every day. And as you'll learn over the days, the heroism of a number of different entities and their officers did make a difference in today's outcome. And as the story unfolds, we'll learn more and be able to share more with you. Thank you.
I've just come from the House of Representatives. It's not on lockdown. I understand the Senate is on lockdown. Of course, the House is not in session today. When the House reconvenes tomorrow, I will lead a moment of silence for yet another heartbreak in our city for the victims and their families. We take an attack on a federal facility in our city personally. It's an attack not just on that facility, it's an attack on our city, it's an attack on our country. I do want to say that the facility itself is one of the most secure facilities in the District of Columbia. We have a long relationship with the Naval Sea Systems Command since we worked to bring it to its present location, which started the revival of the entire M Street corridor, which is now a thriving corridor. We hope that once the investigation is done, once we get back to normal, that the Navy Yard will be run as it has been run ever since the Naval Sea Systems Command got there. Very secure facility, and yet it has an event center, and the organizations in the District of Columbia and region have events there almost every evening. So they've been able to learn to live with the district and yet be a secure facility. Meanwhile, I ask everyone to withhold judgment on what happened. This is really a revolving event, and I want to congratulate and thank the mayor and the federal officials for keeping us as well informed as they could. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Mr. Mayor, what are the total number of
Let's start here.
Mr. Mayor, is there any indication that the dead gunman had a military background?
I don't know one, perhaps Chief or Val, you know?
I think all the information that we want to release on the gunman will be included in information on FBI.gov, and beyond that, we're not going to share any information at this time.
Do you have any idea how he got in the building?
Just a minute. Raise your hand so we can.
Do you have any idea how the gunman got into the building? What-
I don't think we know that information, and frankly, this is a continuing, evolving investigation. There's just certain information that we're not prepared to release at this stage, even if we know the answers.
Mr.
We'll just
Mayor,
have to
you
take
said
time.
earlier, you told me earlier that you had 4 wounded, 12 dead, now you have 13 dead. So does that mean you have 3 wounded? What are the total number of casualties?
There's 13 people who are dead. And then there are probably a dozen or more who are wounded, but again, we're not prepared to say what all the reasons are. Some of them may have been hurt, if I can put it that way, for reasons other than being shot. We'll release that information as we know fully what it is.
Mr. Parlay.
Yes. Patrick.
So just to confirm, is there a second gunman on the loose right now, and how concerned should
We don't know that there is a second gunman on the loose. We know that there was a person who was identified very early in this process. In fact, there were 2. One of them has been ruled out. The other person has certainly not been ruled in as someone who was involved in this horrific incident. But we're trying to find him to get further information about it.
Mayor, you described a video that this person was seen on. Can you tell us more about that video? Was it a security video? Where was the video taken?
I don't think we're prepared to. I mean, there's a lot of questions that are associated with this investigation at this stage that are best left unanswered. One, because we may have only partial information, or they may affect the outcome of the
Mr. Mayor, do you know whether the gunman took his own life, or was he involved in a shootout with officers?
He was engaged in shooting with police officers.
Assistant
Chief, can you give any kind of timeline of how this started and then how it ended? We heard there was a shootout. What did this guy do? Did he go to the 4th floor, shoot to the atrium? We've heard all kinds.
The first call for Metropolitan Police arrived, and within literally 2 to 3 minutes, Metropolitan Police officers were on the scene. Now, internal security had already engaged, identified and engaged the suspect. We already had victims down at that point. Within 7 minutes, we had active shooter teams inside the building, moving through the building. There was multiple engagements with the suspect that was eventually deceased. Both Metropolitan Police and Park Police, our preliminary information, got into a final gun battle with the suspect that is deceased. So, but there were multiple incidents within that time frame in which there was a gunfight with the suspect that was deceased.
Your officers arrived and found people down. I mean, we've heard from some of your people who we've talked to, that this was just something down, that this was one of the worst things they've ever seen. Can you describe what they found when they went in there?
Certainly was one of the worst things we've seen in Washington D.C. as officers enter the building and move through the building. They were, making transmissions and keeping command informed as what they were coming across as they went through. Multiple victims. There was gunfire still going on. This is what we trained for. We were able to pull active shooter teams together. And compliments to the partners here in the National Capital Region, we were able to pull disparate officers from different agencies, put them in a single team, and get them in the building within 7 minutes.
You feel like this guy would have kept shooting?
There's no question he would have kept shooting.
How long did it take to put him
Just to
down?
confirm, Chief, the active shooter teams that you had in there, these were officers in their blues, not in SWAT gear. They had AR-15s, and they're trained to go in there. Is that right?
The officers engaged in the first deployment in there are patrol officers that are in uniform patrol, to include the officers that were engaged in the last, what appears to be the last gunfight, uniform patrol officers and on routine patrol that responded to the call on the scene within minutes. So I think the years of training and practicing and coordinating with the partners has been.
We'll take 2 more questions.
Can you give us a ballpark on the number of rounds that he may have fired?
No. There's just so many questions. I can't give you exact times right now where, obviously there's still a lot of ongoing investigation before we get to the, the kind of summary, but we're not gonna comment on evidence, number of rounds fired, we're not gonna comment on, any details of any evidence recovered, and we're certainly not gonna comment on after-action type things right now. We've got police officers that are still actively engaged and still working in threats, so all that will come later. We will come back in 2 hours. We will do one more 2-hour, one more 2-hour briefing, and then we'll do another then
You must have some
4 hours
idea
later.
how we got on to the Navy Yard, how we got in. There must be some.
ID, did he have an ID? Yes.
Could you please
get the
tell us-
last question for this briefing.
How long did it take to put down the shooter?
We're not gonna comment on that right now.
Chief, can we talk about
Thank
his
you all.
arrest
We'll be back at
record,
6
please?
o'clock. Thank you all very much.
What's the status of the officer with
Look
him?
at that.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Thanks so much. We're not gonna go.